me see your face. You are the one from my dreams.
It's Oblivion time. If you hadn't guessed, with me uploading every VOD for it, this is next up to the chopping block. Now, this is a game that is legitimately nearly older than I am, but I've got a nice little viewpoint on this one since I did play it as a kid, even though I lacked enough frontal lobe development to really understand what was going on. I still did play it. But my first mainline experience understanding and actually beating an Elder Scrolls game started with Skyrim. So I can actually look at Oblivion without nostalgia that most others actually have. I suppose this is actually a good place to start though. The game's age and its differences to its successor games like Skyrim. Overall, in my opinion, the game is considerably more complex than Skyrim. Yet as a weird juxtaposition, it also kinda makes sense in some areas. Just so I don't lose track of myself and trip over my own words, the main areas separating the two generations of the game are predominantly the map size, the quest system, combat stroke magic, the difficulty scaling, skills and levels, and the inventory system. Map size though is a bit of a given. It's obviously a lot smaller than Skyrim, which is to be really expected when it's 5 years older. And it is weird. I said to myself, there's 20 years between Oblivion and Skyrim. It feels like it's actually only 5. And to be honest, it's a big jump for just 5 years. But yeah, it is smaller, but despite that, I've still not actually explored the whole map yet. It's hard for me to say that it means the locations in this game are more well crafted, since Skyrim had a lot of just empty space. Some of the dungeons and explorables that I've seen so far in Oblivion are far more complex design wise, which I really do appreciate. I did get heavily lost in the sewers for a while. There's probably about an hour in the VOD of me trying to escape the sewers. But after going through all of those Oblivion gates, just to see the templates get recycled over and over again, I had to take some points away. The quest system though is a bit more complicated, at least compared to Skyrim. It's been a while since I touched Skyrim, but I swear it was very rare for it to give open-ended quests, where they can be more so very common in Oblivion. You might get a hint for a quest, and then have to interact with the guards in the appropriate town in order to get enough information for the quest marker to appear. Unironically, this is probably the factor that I couldn't progress past as a kid, because my gaming intuition at that point in time was just see enemy, kill enemy. Having to read was not part of my skill set. The other main quest difference is in certain quest outcomes. I don't think there are any missions at all in Skyrim that offered you special rewards for keeping certain people alive, but there are a lot of missions in Oblivion that really try to encourage you to do so. My VODs specifically have me panicking every 5 minutes during certain escort missions trying to keep the NPCs alive. If it's not the Blade member during the cult ambush in the sewers, it's the Count's son from the Knight of Thorns, or the endless suffering of trying not to aggro Maglier during the Fighters Guild. I swear I was in there for I don't know how many times I had to restart it to keep him alive, because you touch him once and he freaked out. Keeping these NPCs alive, they do actually give you unique rewards, and even has some of the NPCs return for additional missions. All of the Blades, for example, came back for the final fight against the Great Gate. Sadly, they didn't come back from that mission, so I'm not sure if there's anything special for keeping them alive then, but if that's even a possibility, sure, but I can appreciate that these types of details exist in the game. Combat and magic. Now, this one's considerably different, but hear me out. Okay? I think Oblivion's combat is rather dull. Yes, yes, I know, yep, boo all you want, boo all you want. I'm not saying Skyrim's is better either, but its downsides get way too much of the spotlight here. If you don't kill the mob in like 2 to 3 hits, it's going to take you like 2 to 300 hits instead. Like further into the game, the enemies just got insanely spongy. It's not like they were doing any damage back to me, even with my nearly always broken armor. We'll get to that later. It was just a slugfest back and forth till they eventually died. Magic, though, it's insane to me how different magic is to Skyrim. At a basic level, being a pure mage is considerably easier in Skyrim. Being able to main hand it like a weapon and offhand it for, stronger spell versions made it feel more like an actual real weapon. In Oblivion though, it's kind of like a side skill. One spell can be equipped, but can be used adjacent to either of your other held weapons. So even if it's a one-handed sword and a shield, you can still use your magic. It did leave an impression on me that magic in Oblivion was just more of a side option to complement your main option. But after seeing some of this stuff people have done with magic, like its complexity and the things that you can do with it is beyond crazy. Creating your own spells, for example, is something Skyrim, for whatever reason, didn't take over, despite it being what I would consider to be like a premium feature. Although this one isn't specifically magic, I would still consider it magic. Looking at what Spiffing Brit did in their video about Oblivion, chasing down that 100% chameleon, which pretty much broke the game completely, and that's obviously tied to both magic and enchanting. The difficulty feels different, though. I don't think Skyrim's difficulties were as draining as Oblivion's. After I finished the game, I went to try the next one above, Expert, the one below Master. And I was going to do this as a high elf pure mage, since I didn't really touch magic in the entirety of my streamed run. To my understanding, the difficulty system in Oblivion is just you deal less damage, the enemies take less damage, and you then take more damage. So considering I already thought the combat was sluggish, these just kinda made it feel so much more tedious. Before even leaving the starting sewers, it took me ages just to kill the rats and the zombie. Even more for the cult members, and if one of them even looked at me, I was dead from a lightning spell. I do like having challenge in the games that I play, but in my opinion, the overcoming of Oblivion's challenge isn't about being a master at the game itself, but rather being a master of the innate jankiness and its exploitable mechanics. Maybe you consider this to be what it takes to master a game, but in my eyes, chasing after, say, 100% chameleon then going full conjuration just seems more like a cheese than anything else. Skills are sort of different from how they are in Skyrim. You still gain your XP from doing the actions responsible for them. Using blunt weapons increases your respective blunt skill, but there are significantly fewer skills in Oblivion, some more condensed or diverged. Instead of two-handed weapons and one-handed weapons, it's based around a type of edge, I guess you could say. So like I mentioned prior, you have blunt damage, but you also have your blade damage for traditional swords. Instead of having skills through your proficiency with said skill, it simply just gets better. And to be honest, I think that's the best way to do a leveling skill system. Like, I think it just beats Skyrim's hand down. You do actually feel yourself getting stronger as you progress, rather than like power spiking whenever you get, that 20, 40, 60% damage skill increase on your main hand. There is one skill in the game that does kind of annoy me, mainly because I completely misunderstood how to effectively use it, and that's armor. It's single-handedly probably the most important skill in the game, but it's done by manually repairing your weapons and gear. I think I ended up going through the entirety of the game just using dropped gear, as my stuff just broke all the time. But yeah, that's a skill issue on my part, I know damn well it is. In some cases though, the skills do feel like they take ages to level. It almost makes me think that whenever you play, you don't want to level up, instead only leveling once you've paid, all the skill trainer levels you can get. Since you can only get trained in a skill 5 times per level, if you manage to do everything before leveling up, then okay, cool, even better. But then you've got that large gold cost to cover. But spending gold is probably easier than leveling them through normal means. And when I say normal means, I mean actually normal means. As I said before, mastery of the game and mastery of the game's janky systems allows for things to be, significantly easier. There's a lot of bypasses. For example, even though it's not an exploit, in the sewers at the start of the game, in that little second section, the rats aren't hostile towards you, because they've used a design trick there to show that the rats feared the zombie. So those rats don't actually process you as an enemy, but crouching near them will still train your sneak. So you can in theory spend 30 minutes down there with all of those rats and get maxed out sneak before even finishing the tutorial. Item duplication glitches allow you to get infinite gold as well, so as well as maxing out the mercantile from selling all of the duplicated goods to the merchants. So yeah, like stuff like this can bypass all the artificial difficulty the skills poses in terms of just how difficult they are to level just by going through a cheese. Lastly is inventory. I've never been more victimized by being over encumbered more than I have in this Elder Scrolls. Opened you, yeah? I did not open you. Oh! I can't take it. I literally can't take it. It's typically the deceptive stuff that makes life painful. Arrows have a weight in this one compared to Skyrim where they have no weight. Armor is really damn heavy, especially if you use heavy armor. Daedric weapons and armor are also super heavy, but I think this is a design choice to prevent them from being like unbalanced, since they are quite readily accessible. But there's no companions, at least as far as I'm aware there's no companions. So it's super easy to end up going into a dungeon and then being unable to carry out any of the sellable loot because of just how heavy it is. I never tested if you could store items on your horse, or if it would eliminate the movement pains for walking back to the nearest town after becoming over encumbered. Since the horse was like, there's no reason to ever use the horse. You're missing out on the two really important athletic skills if you just use the horse. So most of the time I ended up drowning in arrows or potions. And to be honest, I know there's a lot of people that are like me as well who like to keep rare items. So I kept a hold of the Kvatch gear, or the special rare swords I got from completing certain quest objectives, like saving the Knight of Thorns, the guy. Like I got the fancy sword from them, and those just eat away at your storage. And you might think, yeah, you can store them somewhere safe, but yeah, I learned the hard way that safe is very objective. I decided to store my stuff in Cloud Ruler Temple, since that's your glorified safe space, and it turns out that when you store them in public chests, after a few days, the chest will get its loot replaced, deleting everything inside it at the same time.
Sir. Yes?
Arm. I did store it in this cupboard, right? I'm not like... I might have fucked up. Martin, what did you do to the things in this cupboard?
Sir.
I did later stumble into the game's housing system. I was like extremely priced out of the housing, which sucked. There's probably like cheaper options available somewhere rather than, you know, the ones I ended up stumbling across. But I did end up finding a much better alternative. Those being what I assume are DLC houses, or like dens and lairs. They were sort of like themed to specific guilds, and there were two that I found. The Sunken Pirate Ship, which I believe was the Thieves Guild, and this Submerged Temple thing, which was for the Dark Brotherhood. I ended up using this Dark Brotherhood one as my base, not because I had any connection to the guild, but I had an interesting experience with vampirism, and I wasn't keen on seeing myself exploding in the sunlight. So I learned that inside that layer was a cure. You just interact with the cure with this shrine stone pillar, and it just cures you of vampirism. Bit of a bit of a cheese in its own right, but yeah, it was quite a lifesaver and saved me a lot of pain. Right, with the comparisons out of the way though, I can actually start talking about the game on its own. So, story time. The main story for Oblivion is actually rather enjoyable, but I think it's also extremely short. It's very evident that the heavy lifting for the game is done in its side content. The guilds, the explorations, random quests, these are like 80% of the game, while the story occupies maybe the other 20%. If you were to do just the story missions back to back, I think you'd be done in like 3 hours, maybe 4, since that 7 Oblivion Gates missions actually kinda annoying and long. This feels like insanely short to me. I know I said no comparisons, like this is the last one, I promise. But in Skyrim it feels like 3 hours of the main story only gets you to the end of the hand-holding tutorial, where the story actually begins post-Blade's introduction. The missions of the story themselves are actually quite interesting though. Each one had its own charm and was very different from the others, some of which includes those optional bonuses for keeping the story characters alive. There was only one mission I didn't really enjoy, and that was the one just before the ending. Before the great battle, you need to get help from the other cities in the region, but they won't help unless you close their own respective Oblivion Gate. This mission is more or less playing whack-a-mole with like 6 to 7 Oblivion Gates. This wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't the same templates and layouts over and over again, with some not really interesting rewards for completing them either. I never ventured down the enchanting route whatsoever in my playthrough, so I never made use of any of those sigil keystones, or whatever they were called again. Those, to my understanding, are like the only things worthwhile about the Oblivion zones. But luckily you can just run past everything and just grab it, ending the zone and closing the gate without much difficulty. But overall it's an alright story. Like I said though, the real meat and bones of the game is in its side content. As for what is now, staple of the Elder Scrolls franchise, there are the various factions and guilds that work in Oblivion. The Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brotherhood, the arena, or the base game guilds, with some additional extras that would have been DLC back in the day. I think, at least I think it would be DLC, which would be like the Court of Madness. Each of these guilds has their own unique quest chain, missions, areas, probably with enough content to match that of the main story. I only done the Arena and Fighters Guild in my run, since I often enjoy only really going for guilds that match my specific character build. So I'd rather do the Mages Guild on a pure mage, or the Thieves Guild on a sneaky character built for stealth, archery, and light armor, rather than the uber heavy tank maxing character I'd done on my stream. The arena didn't really have much of a storyline in it. It's mainly just fighting with a surprise twist at the end you can do to change the last fight. But the Fighters Guild had a significantly more fleshed out story. Even had one of the funniest moments I had playing the game in it, in the form of like Mogren's painting skills.
What happened?
Nah. Is that meant to be me? You shouldn't have.
Did you speak? Ha! Made you guildmaster? Amazing! You earned it. Me? Ha! I was just getting used to being retired. You can see how good my painting is getting.
Like, honestly, I swear they just walked around the office and asked if someone could recreate that scene in, like, MS Paint, just to use it as a texture. And if that really is the case, that's actually so damn funny to me. Outside of the guilds, there are a myriad of just extra quests you can do, learning about them from random NPCs, talking to each other, or by talking to them directly and hearing rumors. Some of these quests also lead to their own special unique rewards or hidden items. These can range from spells to money or to specially enchanted weapons. Sometimes it might not be associated to a quest, but is rather more environmental storytelling, stumbling into a random ruin and finding small bits of information for you to piece together a supposed outcome and some loot to go with it. I already done my ramblings on combat earlier, so not much more I can really add to that now, but I did have one experience I suppose was funny but also frustrating. Certain enemies might be, might be all enemies for all I know, just relentlessly pursued you, no matter where you went and how much distance you made. I was ruthlessly hunted down by two will-o'-the-wisps. Like, they chased me through 3 whole areas while I was trying to do a quest, and I had no idea how to kill them. I didn't know at the time, but only magic can hurt them. Spells or enchanted weapons, both of which I had little options to use. I did have one sword that was enchanted, but they would out-heal the damage that I could do with it. And I had to kill them with fall damage. Like, it's 100% a skill issue, but it's funny thinking back to it now. There's still plenty more for me to actually do in the game, and I'll no doubt enjoy that content next time I decide to do a new character. Like, it would be easy for me to just go on to my character that I done on stream and just do all the other content, max all the skills, finish every guild, and min-max, I guess. But to me, the best hours spent are the ones done playing along with your restrictions. I don't want to say it's RP, just that having a theme is more interesting to me. Since if you do everything all at once, there's no reason not to do those optimal exploits to max your skills, doing a duplication glitch every character just so you have infinite money. I can't lecture people on how they play their own game, I just know the way I think is the most enjoyable for me personally. To sum everything up though, I think the Oblivion remake is great. Even without the nostalgia most people playing it have, I still think it's an experience worth playing. I'd rate it an 8 out of 10, I'd say. I know it's not perfect, and it's subjective how you look at, you know, this critique point specifically. It retains all its old jank from the original game, to both its advantage and its detriment, because to, you know, to some, that jank is the game's character, and changing it would be a stepping stone in removing the aspects that made Oblivion Oblivion. The combat to me did get very tedious after a while. As I mentioned, it became a 3-hit kill or a 300 hit kill with no wiggle room in between. Then inventory management really added to the pain, spending all that time killing someone just to struggle to take the loot out. Often I had to leave a dungeon halfway to clean my inventory a bit just so I could go back. I think worst case was like 3 trips in the larger dungeons. Keeping in mind I put all of my stats into strength, so I had a large inventory capacity. I can't really ask or suggest things that would make the game better, since you still want to respect the original game and its limitations that it had. Just to list one as an example, I would have liked to see the big battle at the end be, well, bigger. Other than the Blades and Bruma guards, the other towns send maybe 1 to 2 guards each. So that big battle is just 20 or so people. Not really that big in this era of gaming, but that was probably the limits of the harbor back in that era of gaming. But I know for a fact if I was to ever see, say, a New Vegas remaster or remake, I wouldn't want to see the stuff that made New Vegas funny to be changed either. If you haven't played it though, it's definitely worth playing, since we're still waiting years for the new Elder Scrolls anyway, since they teased that trailer 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Any word on that, Todd? No? No? But yeah, this is the perfect filler if you want to scratch that itch of a Bethesda game. And if you fall into the category of people who didn't play the original, even better, because this is your new release for the next decade. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Oblivion remaster. Alright, adios.